Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
All right, we're here on the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Had a little glitch there as I was trying to figure out which button to push. Apparently, I don't know which button to push after all these years. Still catches me up sometimes. Anyway, I am here with John Brown today instead of John Butler because John Butler, every Labor Day, John Butler does his fantasy football draft. They've been doing this since sometime in the 90s, I think.
Fantasy football is more important than anything to anybody working today.
Well, I mean, you know, it is Labor Day. It's a day when we're not supposed to labor, but it's an ironically named holiday, I suppose, if you think about it. But anyway, yeah, we're going to catch you up with some high school football, and we're going to talk a little college football, some soccer, and just, I guess, whatever else comes to mind. And we're really going to start off with a pair of games from Friday night. It's going to be the Glasgow Scotties win over Russellville, and then Caverna's lost to Adair County. And the reason we're going to package these both together in this first segment is because they were playing each other's district rivals. And so and you went to the Caverna Adair County game, so you can kind of give us a glimpse as to what Adair County looked like. And then I went to the Glasgow Russellville game, and let's start off with the Glasgow Russellville game. The Scotties ended up winning at 35-12, and to be honest with you, it was kind of an ugly game. And when I say it was kind of ugly, there were penalties. The heat wasn't so bad, but after the front came through, the humidity was terrible. And so everybody was cramping up, and I'm guessing that was also causing problems in terms of, you know, playing defense or playing offense and all those cramping-related things that come along in high school sports. And really, it was the second week of the season, and it felt like the first week because a lot of times that first week is the one where everything is just off the rails. You know, you have penalties, you have, like, people having issues with the heat and that kind of stuff. So all of our teams in our area played well in that first week despite the conditions. And then last week was, you know, Friday night was the week that seemed to be the one that caught up to them. Glasgow ended up winning the game 35-12, and they had some big plays, bat passes, Hudson Gum to Jarek Martin. Defense had 4 interceptions in the game. Kellen Stone picked off 3 passes by himself. He had the interception hat trick. So, you know, he had a big night. I think he had a big catch as well in the game. I think he had a touchdown and catch in the game. So, you know, it was kind of Cam Bull ran the ball pretty effectively overall. The one thing about the game that kind of surprised me was, and maybe it was just the way Russellville was playing offense, was Glasgow really did not get any pressure on the quarterback, which, you know, the last few years Russellville's been weak up front, and Glasgow, when they've played them, they've just kind of run through them, applied a lot of pressure. But Russellville seemed to have come up with a game plan to deal with that, basically just kind of throwing quick passes, you know, quick outs or comebacks, just getting the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly to their athletes and then trying to see if those dudes could make some plays. And they did a couple of times. But that was the one thing that really kind of surprised me. I really thought Glasgow would dominate the game up front. And they really did on the offensive side of the ball as far as blocking for the run, and letting Gum get some time to pass the ball. But yeah, that part kind of surprised me. I really thought in the trenches Glasgow would be more dominant, John.
Yeah. You know, Russellville's been struggling the last few years, and the result of that game actually kind of concerns me for Caverna versus Russellville.
Yeah.
Because one of Caverna's biggest weaknesses is up front on both sides of the ball. They're not very big, except for Catavian Fryer, who's huge.
Right.
And so it really showed in the game against Adair County. They had a lot of times where before the ball was ever even handed off, there was people in the backfield trying to tackle Kenyon and Tyson Martin, who were, I mean, possibly 2 of the better running backs in the state, and they couldn't get anything going because they don't have room to do anything. And when they would try and run people over, I mean, they can bowl over 2 or 3 people, but once it gets to 4 or 5 and 6 people trying to tackle them, I mean, it's kind of just, you know, dead in the water.
Yeah.
And so they had a problem doing that, so that kind of concerns me about their game for Russellville. But what really concerns me over the next 2 weeks is that their quarterback is gone. He was Cortavian Maxey was ejected from the game against Adair County. If you checked out the photos from the game, there's even a photo of Trevent Hayes, Caverna's head coach, arguing to the official about it. And, you know, it was just a big hoopla, but it's really they're down one more player that they can't be down.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough players to be down any players.
Yeah. Well, and, you were there. I mean, it's kind of one of those classic cases of things aren't going well for you, and maybe the other player gets a cheap shot off, the officials miss, but if you're the retaliator, or if they catch you, then that's always seems to be the way it works out. If you're the person who is retaliating, you always seem to be the person who gets called for the flag, gets ejected from the game, that kind of stuff. And it's one of those classic cases of, or seemingly classic cases of just don't let them get under your skin.
Yeah, I think the heat was kind of getting to him. I think in the first week it wasn't nearly as hot outside as it was in week 2, and then having to play a team who is probably a top 15 team in 3A, and they've got their whole sideline filled up. It can get exhausting and it can probably get frustrating, but as you said, you just can't retaliate against any of that.
Right. Well, and so I'm fascinated to see how this goes for Caverna, because now on the upside for them is Jalen Crane came back and decided to play, and he was out there on defense. Of course, he was the starting quarterback really the last couple of years, and really going all the way back when these guys were in middle school, he was the quarterback. And so I guess we'll see whether or not he winds up playing quarterback with Maxey out.
They did. The game ended with 9:33 left in the third quarter, but they did end up running the Wildcat with Tyson at quarterback. I'm not sure if that's what they're going to continue. That kind of seemed like an emergency plan because who thinks their quarterback's about to get ejected from the game?
Right.
So we'll see how it works out. But I think they had actually more production in the Wildcat for the few minutes that they were able to run it than they were in their regular offense, which was a little surprising.
I guess what happens there is you're not having to hand the ball off to somebody.
Not as much time behind the line.
Yeah, it's snapped to you and you just go. You know what I mean? And maybe they do decide to go with that and then try to work in some things where they don't really throw the ball that much, but they just try to work in some misdirection and that kind of stuff. The team they're going to face this Friday, Eminence, is going. They were good last year, but they were up on them 18-0 in the first quarter, I think it was, when they played them at home last year. So it's a team. And then going back to Jalen Crane, he got injured in the game, and things kind of came apart because then Eminence was able to throw the ball over the top. But with Crane out there on defense last year, they were getting nothing done. I think they, as a matter of fact, I think it was Tyson who had intercepted basically a bubble screen or something, returned it for a touchdown in that game. So maybe Eminence is not going to have as many players, not going to be as big and physical, I wouldn't think, as Adair County. I doubt they would be as explosive on offense because what we have not mentioned yet about Adair County is Easton Jesse, who was a 4-year quarterback at Glasgow, is now a 5th-year player due to the COVID allowments, and so now he's the quarterback at Adair County.
He looked good out there. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He's not about to chuck it 50, 60 yards on you. But what he will do is move around in the pocket until someone gets open.
Yeah.
And with Stonebreaker and a few of those other dudes on Adair County, they're fast enough and they have enough endurance to just keep running around the field until Easton is able to find them open.
Yeah.
And so it can be tricky to try and stop them.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that Easton Jesse actually did well at Glasgow in the offense that they had at the time was he would run some, but also he was under pressure. He was a guy that would break out of the pocket and run on you as well. And so, he kind of gives them that dimension that they probably didn't have previously. And going back to the Russellville-Caverna situation in the district, I mean, it's a 2-horse race in that district because Fulton County and Ballard Memorial are not going to challenge either one of them, I don't think.
No. I think it's just those two. I think it's just Russellville and Caverna who are really competing for that district this year.
Yeah, and so Caverna's trying to do something they've never done before, which is win 2 district titles in a row. And they have, this is really a crop of juniors is what they have. They were sophomores last year. So, if they want to do it, they're going to have to figure out how to solve that front side issue on the offensive and defensive line, but especially on the offensive line, because on the defensive side against other teams that don't have Easton Jesse and the receivers that Adair County has, you can utilize Tyson and Kenyon Martin and Russell Williams and some of these other guys probably in ways that you can't utilize them against a team like Adair County, where you can probably use them to pressure, blitz, and do different things like that. And plus, at some point in time, you're going to face a team where they're not capable of triple teaming Fryer.
Yeah. Yeah, eventually Fryer's going to be able to actually bust through that line because not everybody on the offensive line is going to be going after solely him, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, both games, he's come to the sideline and he's just been like, I can't go anywhere. They're triple teaming me. They're triple teaming me. And, football coaches, well, deal with it, or whatever. But, I mean, in reality, he has been getting covered up.
Yeah. Which, I mean, eventually opens a door for other guys to take advantage of that situation.
Right.
Against teams, I mean, Muhlenberg County was also a team that threw the ball pretty effectively. So that's another thing. They've played 2 teams in a row that are kind of focused on trying to get the ball out quickly, probably. And in the case of, even in Adair County's case with Easton, even if you don't get it out quickly, you got a guy who can move around until you can get it out. So the next, they'll have some games coming up where they're going to play teams and it's going to be a different kind of matchup. It's going to be run-based teams and that kind of stuff. And they're going to have a harder time trying to keep all those people from being in the backfield, tackling the people. And then for Glasgow, I think week 1 against LaRue County, the rebuilt offensive line, 5 new starters there, I thought played pretty well. I think they actually did play pretty well against Russellville. It's just the combination, I think, of penalties and just the heat and that kind of stuff. Glasgow, I guess maybe what it is, Russellville just loaded the box and tried to shut down Glasgow's run, which did open up the door for some big pass plays. And that's another thing. If you have a guy like Jarek Martin out there and Hudson Gum has not too many seconds, but just enough to throw it downfield to him, he can really take it to the house. He's had 2 games in a row where he's had, I think, 50-yard plus touchdown receptions. And so, that's going to be an interesting setup for them as they go forward. The offensive line is going to get better because, it's 5 new starters out there. One of the things I think they had a little bit of problem with, especially when they were in a shotgun on Friday night, was the snap was a low sometimes, so their offense wasn't quite clicking 100%. It's also the case that you're going into a game against a team that you beat senselessly last year and even the year before that you've dominated for 2 years, and maybe that week of practice you're not as sharp. You know what I mean? That's one of those things coaches talk about sometimes, is that you can tell somebody this team's dangerous, this team's dangerous, this team's dangerous, but if you've handled them pretty easily the last couple of seasons,
it can be a little hard to take that seriously.
Yeah, because you're looking down the road to the week after, and you're going to play Monroe County, and the week after that is Allen County Scottsville. So you got 2 schools coming up after them that or can be dangerous.
I don't know. Russellville may be better than Monroe this year.
Man.
Monroe got dog walked by Allen.
That really surprised me, too, because this is a year I know Monroe circled and said, we've got these guys coming back. They've got a bunch of COVID do-over dudes who are playing basically their 5th-year high school football. And getting beat 40-6 really surprised me.
By one of your rivals.
Yeah. And because they played really well the week before against Todd County Central. Now, I was told that they did have like 4 starters out for the game, which is one of the things that's really bitten Monroe in recent years with this group that they've had, is just like injuries. They've had a hard time keeping these guys on the field, and so despite the fact that they got a bunch of solid players coming back, there's still not that many of them. You know what I mean? You can't lose key players, or especially depending on where they are. And I don't even mean quarterback. If you lose linemen and that kind of stuff, as to test what we've just been talking about, that's going to hurt you, because even at Monroe, you got a bunch of folks who are probably playing both ways. And so Allen, but the score did surprise me.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you.
That I thought it was going to be at least a little closer, just because, those games between Allen and Monroe and Glasgow, whenever those teams pair up and decide to play each other, those games are usually pretty close, just because of the emotions running within them.
Yeah. So, that's that you're right. That score surprised me. What were some other scores around the area that kind of stuck out to you?
Let's see. Go ahead.
What'd you think about the Bowling Green win over Owensboro?
Oh, that one was pretty good. After they got, beat down a little bit by Frederick Douglass, which I'm not sure anybody knew Frederick Douglass was quite that good.
Yeah.
It was good for them to get back on, back on track. But I guess, if they're gonna end up winning the 5A state championship again, they have to beat better teams than Owensboro. Yeah. And I know Owensboro's not terrible, but they're not state champions.
Well, Owensboro has been kind of the other threat in this, along with Bowling Green and South Warren. Owensboro has always been the other team kind of out there in 5A in this neck of the woods. But, yeah, Bowling Green's kind of owned them in recent years. But Owensboro traditionally is a pretty good team. But, yeah, going back to the Frederick Douglass thing, I mean, so they beat Bowling Green soundly. Turns out Frederick Douglass might be the best team in the state.
Maybe.
Did they beat Trinity on Friday?
No, they ended up losing to Trinity. So I think I still stand firm that Trinity's probably the best team in the state. But I wanted to ask you this question.
Okay.
Because I was talking to my girlfriend about Boyle County, right?
Yeah.
And so I was telling her that I think they're probably the best team in the state, regardless of division. And so she asked what division they were in. And I said 4A. And she said, oh, is that like the best division? And I was like, well, it's not supposed to be because 6A is supposed to be.
Uh-huh.
And I thought about it. And I think 4A might be the best division, or at least the deepest division in the state.
Who else is in 4A?
Because you've got Highlands. I'm pretty sure Highlands is still 4A.
Yeah.
You've got Paducah-Tillman. You've got Corbin. You've got Boyle County. And, I mean, with just those four right there, I mean, those are 4 schools who could possibly be top 10 regardless of division as well.
Yeah, I think there is, one of the either Max Preps or USA Today or one of those has the nation's top 25 teams, and I think Boyle County is the highest ranked Kentucky team in that listing.
Yeah, I mean, they are nasty.
Yeah.
I saw some highlights from their game. I don't even remember who they played because Boyle County is the only thing that really matters when they're playing a game.
They beat Bryan Station 48-8.
Yeah, I mean, they had this dude, and he jumped up in between two guys getting sandwiched and caught a touchdown pass down at his waist, falling to the ground.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know how I don't know how he was able to do that, because I'm pretty sure it was pass interference, plus he was falling to the ground, plus the ball was low.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just too good.
They might be the best team in the state right now. But I'd forgotten. I thought Trinity had. For whatever reason, I guess Frederick Douglass was up in that game, and I never really went back and checked it to see what the final was. But yeah, they lost 23-13 to Trinity. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. 4A is if you can probably pick out 6 teams in 4A and say that they're all 6 some of the best teams in the state, no matter what classification. Tell you another one that's out there, I believe, is Christian Academy of Louisville.
Yeah.
I believe they're 3A at this point in time.
Yeah, they're still 3A, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so they're out there giving people a hard time as well. Anything else you can think about from Glasgow, Caverna?
Glasgow versus Adair should be a good game, and I can't wait to see it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I wonder how much trash talk there's going to be between Easton and his former team.
That's kind of one of those fascinating things when you in that situation when you have a guy who's played with a bunch of these people for a long time. But if you kind of think about it, technically speaking, if Easton had not had the COVID do-over year, he would have been a senior last year. So all those dudes who really graduated last year would have been the ones he would have been his class. So I don't know what kind of relationship he has with these other guys, because they're kind of different than he is in that situation. So he may have been closer to the other group. He may be closer to this group. I guess we'll see. There's not that many seniors this year for Glasgow, which is usually the way this works out for them. All right, it's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, John. Other John Brown here today. John Butler's drafting his fantasy football team. He's going to give us a recap next week of his fantasy football draft so that we can learn from him. He's been doing this so long. I mean, he's got to be a bona fide expert at it. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about this Barren County game versus Trigg County. At halftime, the score of this game was 8-0, which was kind of surprising considering the final was 30-6. And I don't interesting thing about that game, Tate Spillman, I think, threw 4 passes in it.
Yep.
2 for 4, I believe, with his stats.
Yep. 2 for 4 for 34 yards.
Yeah, so for those who do not know about John Myers football, here it is. He'll tell you this every time. Run the football, stop the run, win games. It's pretty dadgum simple. I mean, it's almost like, you might as well think of Vince Lombardi out there.
Before the forward pass was invented type stuff.
Yeah, probably. Although when they do throw it, Jackson Bird and Bray Bewley have been pretty good targets.
Yeah. Jackson Bird is a heck of an athlete.
Yeah, he is. He's had 2 catches in a row for this season where he's basically jumped over 2 dudes and caught a pass. One was at the end of the first half and in the season opener for a touchdown. I think it was 3 seconds left to go in the first half. And I think you had one kind of like that Friday night against Trigg County. The interesting here, little sidebar real quick. It's related to Barren and related to them beating Trigg County 2 years in a row, probably. 2 years in a row, Trigg County has shown up at Barren County. They've had injuries coming into the game. They've had multiple quarterbacks and other players knocked out of the game. And they've got to feel like their coaching staff has got to be like, we are never going back to Barren County. I imagine they might be like, if they were playing a game in Russell Springs, they would drive around Barren County to get there. I would if I was them. I would never go through Barren County again. I would not come back here and play another football game because both years they've been here for this Trojan Trail Turf War, it has been bad for them. And not just because they lost the game, but because injuries. They had people getting knocked out of the game, and it's just crazy. So anyway, I don't know how good or bad Trigg County is. It was a close game in the first half. I think there was the same thing last year before everybody started dropping like flies. Although I think actually their starting quarterback had already been knocked out of the game. Their guy that they brought in to play quarterback then got injured right before halftime, and so he didn't play in the second half. And so that's why I say they'll drive around Barren County the next time they got to go somewhere.
And they had to find their emergency quarterback or something, it sounds like.
Yeah, and Waterboy was not available.
Oh,
Bobby Boucher was not over there with the mystery coming. So they were struggling really, really terribly on offense. But second half, though, Barren offensively got rolling. And, they had a huge touchdown run by Jordan Harris. I think it was like 71 yards, something like that. He had 100 and what yards in that game?
165 rushing on 5 attempts.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Here's the other thing about the John Myers wing tee offense. What, they have 7 different people carry the football? Something like that?
Yeah, 7. Technically, Tate, I think it was just him mostly being sacked on the runs. He's 7 for negative 10 yards.
Yeah.
So 6 people running the ball, but I know Tate does run the ball,
he does
so
have
7.
A rushing touchdown in that game.
Oh, yeah, he did.
So,
he did run it a little bit.
Yeah. He must have just had a couple of plays that went south for him. But anyway, and then they had Dalen Thomas. That was his first game with the Trojans. I think he had 8 carries for like 75 yards or something like that. So, I didn't think they used him a whole lot from what I saw in the game. Of course, what happened was I went to Glasgow's game to start with because Barron's game was supposed to start at 8 o'clock. Glasgow's game did start at 7 like it was supposed to. It took 3 hours and 15 minutes, I think, to play the game. So then I got over to Barren in the second quarter, and that game didn't start until 9:15, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then it did not end until right close to midnight. So that was a long night, man. Then you had driven to Marion County, so I'm telling you it was a long night. But it was a long. It was
at least
night.
my game ended in the third quarter.
Yeah, you got to leave early.
Yeah.
But yeah, so back to the Dalen Thomas thing. So I don't know how much they really plan on using him. He's going to be a big weapon for them, but they have a situation now where Jordan Harris, Tate Spillman, Dalen Thomas, Briggs Harris, who had a big run the first week but was out this past week. And then you have Jackson Bird and Bray Bewley as receivers. You have a lot of guys who can actually hit home runs for Barren County. And for Barren County sports fans, especially football fans through the years, that's just not something you could say. A lot of times if they were going to win games, they're going to grind them out. They weren't going to hit home runs on you. So it's a fascinating change of pace for Barren County football, I do believe.
It's fun to see because generally, from what I remember growing up and watching Barren County as a Glasgow fan, their offense was incredibly boring and incredibly non-functional for most years. So that's good to see. I'm glad that that's happening because that'll make the games just more fun to watch, you know.
Yeah.
Even for someone who, may not be a fan of Barren County, it's a lot more fun to watch a team, wheeling and dealing than, kind of stuck in the mud.
I've always told people this because, my children went to Glasgow, and so they'd ask me questions about who I rooted for, and I was like, look, from my perspective, work-wise, the better the teams are that I cover, the better it is for me. Because if they're not, I want people to check out the photos, listen to this show, read the stories, watch the videos, do all that kind of stuff, right? That's what I do. They're much more apt to do that if they're really fired up about their teams, and they're fired up about their teams unless their kids are playing, they're fired up about their teams if they're being successful. So for me,
unless you're Bowling Green.
Well, I don't cover them, so I don't really care. But you're right; they don't seem to be fired up no matter what. We'll get to that some other day. So it's one of the most amazing things.
Yeah.
But then again, I remember when I was
quite impressive.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I went to Hattiesburg High School, and we were one of the best football teams in the state. And we would have pep rallies where people just sit on their hands.
It's something about that purple and gold.
It is really, I guess so. I think we were all salty in Hattiesburg because we looked like we were with LSU, but we're in southern Mississippi, and so we're all like, why don't we look like LSU? Why don't we look like somebody else? But anyway, being the Tigers, man, that's a life's trauma right there for me. Maybe that's why I hate LSU so much. Anyway, so. But it is. If the better Barren County, Glasgow, Caverna are, then the better it is for us who cover them because more people are interested in what they're doing. And the amazing thing about Barren County football through the years is the fan support it's gotten, despite the fact that there have been many lean years for Barren County football. So the hype level is high. They look really good in the first couple of games. I think. What Myers brings to the table as far as his experience, the offense he's running, and I've actually just been impressed at how well they've run the offense because it's not an easy offense to run, that wing tee, because it's got a lot of things especially for an offensive line that you got to know what the play call is and where you need to block and all this kind of stuff that they're trying to get the plays, big plays on you and that kind of thing, or get the plays to work, and so they've adapted to it really quickly as well.
Mm-hmm. So. I think the real test comes next week when they play Warren East.
Yeah.
Because Warren East looks pretty good this year. I think that'll be it'll be a real challenge for Barren County to kind of replicate their production from the first 2 weeks into that week.
Yeah.
Warren East just came off of a huge win against Greenwood. Mm-hmm. So, they're pretty legit this year. The quarterback,
Dane
Parsley is very good.
Yeah.
I'd say he's somewhat akin to Easton. He's really good at extending plays and using his legs to, get yards.
Yeah. He's probably a bigger, more physical player than Easton as well.
He is bigger, yes. So that'll be a real test for Barren, and I think that'll really show how far they've come from just last year. Because they were good last year, but I think this year they can be great. Mm-hmm. And so I think against Warren East they'll have that chance to show that they can be great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an impressive win for the Raiders because they won 21-14. You hold Greenwood to 14 points. I think they scored 35, 38 in the first game of the season against Hopkinsville, I think it was. And Greenwood's offense has been pretty good the last few years with William Howard there. So, yeah, I thought that was an impressive win by Warren East. Dane Parsley, he's a different animal at quarterback in terms of trying to corral him, and he can make a lot of big plays happen. And they've got some speed on the outside and that kind of stuff. And one of the things that has happened for Warren East that they used to struggle with is their offensive and defensive fronts have been better in recent years. Used to they might have some skill players, but their lines usually were kind of weak. And so they've been better there in recent years, which is why they've been more successful. So, yeah, that'll be a big game. By the way, we'll have that game right here on 104 The Score with Jay Turner on the call. Pre-game's going to be about 6:30, 6:35, something like that. Kickoff is at 7 o'clock. And, yeah, I look forward to see how that one goes. I think that's where you're going Friday, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, because I'm at the Glasgow Monroe game. I'm gonna go to town for that one. Anything else from the Barren County game that you can think of?
No. They looked pretty good. Trigg County gets injured, makes Barren look better.
Yeah.
It's about all there is to it, I guess.
Yep, probably it. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
John, the WKU Hilltoppers went to Alabama, and they collected a payday and got absolutely mauled. I mean, the pachyderms just stampeded right over them, and I didn't expect WKU to win the game, but I didn't know what to expect necessarily from Alabama because they've been, they got a new coach. Nick Saban's gone after all these years. They did get the guy from Washington who turned that program got them into the playoffs last year. So
got them into the championship game.
Got them into the championship game. That is correct. So he's obviously a guy who can recruit. He knows what he's doing. But you just never know how that transition is going to happen. And so, there was Alabama, I guess, as a byproduct of that, they were ranked number 5 instead of number 1 or 2. Isn't
that crazy? You get a whole new coach and half your team transfers out and you're still ranked number 5 preseason?
Well, it is Alabama.
I know. That's just insane. That's an insane level of pedigree.
It is. And that's going to bring me to a topic at the end of this particular segment, as a matter of fact. But so I figured Alabama would win the game. They're just Alabama. Even if half your team transfers out, those who transfer in are going to be Alabama quality players. But you just don't know how that, the takeover, what's his name, DeBoer and that kind of stuff, the takeover, what he's going to do. How much of a force of personality Nick Saban's been in that locker room, in that program for these last 17 years or whatever it's been he was there. So, but apparently it doesn't matter because, they looked good. They were absolutely dominant. The team speed is just insane, the difference. Guys just, catching slant routes and nobody can catch up to them, even though it's a 5-yard pass, and then it's like 50 yards later and there's nobody from WKU, in the screen with them. And that kind of stuff is just amazing. And so WKU really struggled. They got a hard time blocking the front. I guess that's one thing about Alabama that didn't change.
Yeah.
they're
never going to change.
No, their front seven is going to be some of the best in the nation no matter what. Mm-hmm. And so the final was 6-3-0 for those who didn't pay attention or turned it off and decided I can't watch any more of this, which I wouldn't blame you if you did. And our boy Dalvin Smith, he caught 2 passes for 4 yards, I think it was.
I think so, yeah.
And, basically WKU just really could do nothing on offense with him.
Yeah, new quarterback TJ Finley didn't look good.
No.
Backup quarterback Cade Veltkamp, Bowling Green native, didn't look good. Nobody
had nothing to do with
nobody looked good, and I think it was because Alabama is just that much better than them, which surprised me because, I guess I didn't realize there was such a large gap still. I thought WKU had kind of, improved to a point where they could be somewhat respectable and not look like an FCS team against Alabama.
Yeah.
But I was wrong.
Maybe
Alabama's just that good this year, though.
I think we're going to hit on that narrative here in a little bit, all right? So the next game up got called with 9:56 to go in the third quarter, and Kentucky was beating Southern Miss 31-0. I don't know if the final would have been 63-0, but it may have been in the 50s and nothing. And Southern Miss is another one of those kind of like WKU programs where
I mean,
They've
been on
called mid-majors, but I'm
yeah,
not sure we can call them that anymore.
Southern Miss for the last few years has been on the downturn, which is kind of a shame just because of the heights they reached in the early 2010s or whatever it was. Finishing ranked 4th in the nation. But I guess that's just kind of how it goes for schools like WKU and Southern Miss. You can be good for a couple years or even great for a year, but you're kind of just, once those guys leave, you're not replacing them with more of those guys.
Not these days for certain.
Yeah, especially not these days, because as soon as they show up on campus, they're jetting off somewhere else.
Yeah, if they outside of Frank Gore III, who did stick around at Southern Miss last year, they are generally packing up and going somewhere else. And that, again, we're going to get to that here in a little bit, because it's one of those things on Saturday that kept recurring, and I kept thinking to myself, have any of these people been at this major program since last year? I mean, they all new? But anyway, and like I said, that game ended up being called because of the weather delay. It took 2 hours to get the game started. Then they had a weather delay again in the third quarter, and they said, I mean, I don't know if Southern Miss said no mas, or they were like, it's a long flight back to H-Burg. Pine Belt doesn't stay open late. Pine Belt Airport doesn't stay open that late. We need to get back by 11. I don't know what the deal was. But they were out of there. And so, again, failed to mention this, that WKU plays their rival, Eastern Kentucky, this coming Saturday at 6 p.m. So we'll get to have a better idea what that looks like. And then the Kentucky Wildcats get SEC action started Saturday at 2:30 against South Carolina at home. Meanwhile, Louisville beat Austin Peay like they stole
like they were
something.
an FCS team. Because they are one.
Yeah, they are. They is an FCS team. 16-0. Another case of there was just the talent gap was incredible.
Yeah.
Every time a Louisville player caught the ball, they just outran everybody with the ball, away from Austin Peay. And then they get to play Jacksonville State on Saturday at 2:30. So they better win that game in the same fashion.
We're not gonna tell much from Louisville besides they're better than Jacksonville State, unless they're not. I don't know for sure.
Yeah, we don't know how good. Jacksonville State is a division. Well, they're an FBS program now in the Sun Belt, so I believe that's right. No, are they in Conference USA?
They're in Conference USA.
See, man, that's the other part of this. I just can't remember who's where. But anyway.
Well, just remember if they're new, they're in Conference USA or the Sun Belt and nowhere else.
That's true. They've not ascended to the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, SEC yet.
Yeah, they're like the football championship over in England for the Premier League.
Yeah, at least their players are.
Yeah, their players are. I mean, the teams aren't ever going to make it there, but their players might.
Yeah, it is. You get to move up your players.
Yeah.
Not your program. So, but that does bring me to this. As I looked at these scores, and then I looked at some of these others that were the mid-majors versus SEC or ACC programs, maybe Big 10, Big 12 programs, especially maybe Big 10, and they were so lopsided. I mean, they were just...
There was only one that I can think of that wasn't just a complete and utter blowout, and that was Oregon versus Idaho. And, I mean, people were celebrating that like it was already an upset, and Oregon still won.
Yeah, that was the only one, and which makes you question whether Oregon is any good.
Yeah. That was a little tough for any Oregon fans out there.
If you weren't winning the game 69-0 or 69-10 against one of your fellow FBS but lower conferences.
Did Idaho come back?
I think the final was they may have won by 20.
I mean, did they come back to the FCS or FBS? I thought they had dropped down to the FCS for a couple years.
I have no idea.
Oh, well. It doesn't really matter. It's Idaho. They play in the Kinney Dome.
The only thing that I know about them is they're called the Vandals, right? Which is the best part of Idaho.
Yeah. They play in like that barn-looking stadium where it's just like a white half cylinder.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the best thing about Idaho.
But they're the Vandals. They should have made like a ship shape. Something like that.
I don't know. I really think that was an old barn that they just were like, all right, we can play football in here.
We can throw some hay on the floor, and we can throw a tarp on top, and we can run some jet heaters up in here, and then it'll be, it won't be 10,000 degrees below zero during the winter.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that was the thing that stood out to me was just the utter blowouts in these games. And I was thinking to myself, we had a period of time where it looked like there was an evening happening in college football. Sort of like it has in men's college basketball, where those mid-majors got to be competitive. And so you had your Southern Misses and WKUs and even UABs or South Floridas or
even Cincinnati making
Cincinnati, yeah. They kind of came through and they were in Conference USA, or they were in, the MAC, or they were in Midwest Conference. No, what is it? Mountain West Conference, that kind of stuff. Those programs, though, have all graduated to, the bigger leagues at this point, bigger conferences. And so we're left with the WKUs, Middle Tennessee, Southern Misses, and all these that have had their moments of glory, but their talent leaves, if it's exceptional, and goes to Alabama, Georgia, I guess Tennessee, maybe not Clemson, but maybe not Florida State. But, they're going to these programs, and so then those guys, like you mentioned, half Alabama's team leaves, but the half that comes in is either proven college players somewhere else, or, I guess that's kind of what they are. They're proven college players somewhere else. And so what seems to happen is then, like, WKU gets a guy who at quarterback or from somewhere else that knew they weren't going to be the starter at Alabama, Clemson, Florida State, wherever it is that they were going to be. And so they go to WKU, or maybe they go to Southern Miss, or they go to one of these other programs, Louisiana Lafayette. I don't know. But maybe it turns out there was a reason that they weren't staying at Florida State.
Yeah. Maybe.
And so this talent gap actually seems to be getting wider, at least in week one of this season. That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I think it's because, the players who are the best want to play with and against the best, so they're going to go to, schools like Alabama and Georgia and places like that because they know that they're going to be playing against the best. They're going to get the best training. They're going to get the best conditioning, the best food, the best money at this point. And
there it is.
They're going to make it. They're going to have a much higher chance of making it to the NFL, whereas the players who transfer out of those types of schools and into schools like WKU are the players who have maybe realized this will be their only chance to try and get to the NFL because they're not going to play at these other schools at all.
Yeah,
and
they're trying to get that playing. They're the Michael Penix situation, maybe.
And the money that is at schools like WKU is going to go to those people because they were big-name recruits and they were big names at one point. Mm-hmm. It's just that maybe that big name wasn't deserved, but they're still going to try and cash that check.
Well, going back, the one school out of all this I did not mention was Ohio State. And the $20 million, I think, they spent on this team that they have.
Yeah.
And so you kind of look at that.
We're going to have to get a cap.
College football, hey, probably. That is part of the discussion that's going on, I think, out there in that NIL realm is how do we manage this so that we don't just blow this up? Because if it gets blown up, a lot of people who've been making money who are not at the Ohio States, Alabamas, et ceteras out there are not going to be making any money. As a matter of fact, they may be shaking a tin cup on the sidewalk somewhere asking for change if they're not careful.
Right.
So, it's kind of one of those situations where now you have a bunch of people getting together going, wait, this might be out of control. And you're like, really? When did you come to that conclusion? So, go ahead.
Yeah, I always, whenever I think about or talk about, the NIL problem and the fact that, it's basically like the Wild West is the story of Caden Proctor, who was at Alabama, and then he decided, I'm going to transfer to Iowa, and then he got his NIL opportunity, whatever, contract, got the money, and then transferred out of Iowa back to Alabama.
Oh yeah, he's the dude that they said has now
It's amazing.
back to Alabama.
Yeah, it's what an amazing story. I mean, y'all just let this happen. I mean, y'all could have just put rules and regulations in place to begin with, but then you had to have a situation of a kid being smart enough to let me go to this school and immediately leave because I don't even want to be there. I just want their money. To realize, oh, we might have a problem.
See now, in the professional world, that'd be a violation of contract.
Right, but I mean, that don't even exist in college.
I know. So I mean, it is one of those things. I mean, there will be programs that'll be, say, like the Blue Jays in MLB baseball, where they're not really building their competitiveness through money. They're building it through farming, their farm programs, good coaching, training, and that kind of stuff, with the understanding that when the big contract comes, they're probably going to lose that dude, but they're going to have enough of them that can be competitive year in, year out, while the Yankees and Red Sox are spending their last dime on the biggest names. And so there will be programs who will figure this out and maybe can stay in that realm. Iowa may actually be one of them, despite the Caden Proctor example, because they seem to be able to recruit players that fit Kirk Ferentz program or whomever is there. They got an idea of how they're going to do this. But they're going to be the Ohio States of the world who have people with a lot of money, or the Michigans of the world probably. I guess Alabama's. You would have thought Florida, but maybe Miami.
Yeah, it's the U again.
It's the U. It's the U with a dollar sign legally attached to it now.
Yeah.
Instead of just what was that dude Campbell? That's 2 Live Crew financing everything behind closed doors. Now he can get out there and finance it openly. Anyway, real quick, let's talk a little bit about the NFL. The season kicks off Thursday. We got a Ravens-Chiefs rematch at 7:20 p.m. Curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I'm gonna make my prediction that the Ravens win, but in all reality, I feel like the Chiefs are probably gonna win, and I'm only choosing the Ravens because I like them.
Yeah. And then the Packers and Eagles play on Friday at 7:15 p.m. And then on Sunday, the Titans play the Bears. You can hear that game right here on 104thescore.com or 104 The Score. And then we get a look at Caleb Williams, the guy who a lot of people think is going to be the greatest quarterback in the history of NFL. I don't know about that.
I think he's going to be good, but if you look at every other quarterback who's come from Lincoln Riley's system,
yeah,
they're really, really good college quarterbacks. They're not really that good at being a pro.
No.
Because they run fully out of a system. They're not making seemingly independent choices while they're on the college football field. And then when they come to the NFL, they've got to be placed into a system where they don't have to be making those decisions again. That's why Baker Mayfield had such a resurgent season, is because he didn't have to think too much. He just got to play.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's what the Bears are going to do. Maybe they're instituting a system that fits Caleb Williams. But, he really struggled last year at USC and often. But, I mean, obviously their offensive line was atrocious last year, and he was running for his life most of the time. That probably had an impact. But those are the kinds of seasons that make me think to myself, well, we'll see how he handles the pressure of the NFL, because that's going to be tough as well.
Yeah, I do have a feeling that the Bears aren't going to help him out, because for the last 50 years or whatever, they haven't helped out any of their quarterbacks.
Yeah, there's a laundry list of former Bears quarterbacks who went and played somewhere else, and it just turned out that, first of all, maybe they weren't that good, and then second of all, the Bears didn't do anything to make them any better. They just stuck them out there and watched them get pummeled, basically.
Yeah, the Bears are one of those teams who haven't moved forward into the future where passing is a thing, or effectively passing, I guess I should re-say that. Everybody tries to pass. Who knows if you can actually do it.
True. All right, this is Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
All right, we're going to close out the show today with our last 5 minutes, talking a little bit about some high school soccer. I put down here the season, strangely enough, is halfway done, and some of these teams do not have many games on their schedule. I was looking down Warren East's schedule, boys, I think they only have like 11 games on their schedule online.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm not sure if it's like some of these games aren't being put on because they're going to, or put online because they're like going to some of those events where you play like 2 and 3 games in a day, or what? Because it seems pretty weird that like a lot of teams I've looked at across the state will have like 10, 12 games all year, and it's just, it's like, do y'all really want to be out here?
Well, I mean, there are programs that don't play that many games, but Warren East, I would think, does not fall into that category.
Yeah, I mean, they should be playing a full schedule considering they're fully within a district and region and all that.
Got plenty of players.
Yeah, got plenty of people to play and got a bunch of teams around you to play against. It's weird.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought too. So anyway, on the boys' side of the 15th district, Glasgow's 3-1. They split with Warren East. And then they beat Barren on penalty kicks last week. It was a heck of a game.
That was surprising to me.
Yeah, and I think the thing with Barren at the moment is they don't seem to really have a scorer. They can play defense, and I noticed they put some of their guys, more experienced guys, on the defensive side. That's where Lawrence has put them. So they're kind of playing the games like that. They're trying to keep the games close, maybe try to get to PKs or something like that, or the gold, get to the golden goal time. Win the games in that sort of way. But they do struggle a little bit to score. And then, meanwhile, Glasgow, they got off a mountain of shots in that game. I think they get off a mountain of shots in every game. They're just not always on target. But you can see where they do have some guys who can score some goals. They're still trying to figure out how to really run the system the way Coach Mahung wants them to. They're kind of up the middle a lot. They're not outside in a whole lot. So, that kind of is kind of what's happening with them, I think, offensively. And then, so Barron's 1-1 in the district. They play at East tomorrow. And then East is 2-1. Allen is 0-3. I think you saw Allen. Barron beat them 5-3. Was that
5-3? That game was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be because I had watched Allen County last year, and I mean they weren't very good.
Yeah,
they didn't have many players. They had one dude on the team who's still on the team this year, who's pretty good. But they are a lot more organized this year than they were last year. Like last year, it was kind of like they were playing rec league, and this year they're playing actual high school soccer. They just don't have a ton of experience playing soccer, I don't think, in Allen County.
Right.
So they don't have a bunch of skilled players, but they are organized now, which shows in the fact that they got 2 rebound goals, and then the one kid who's really good, he had a ridiculous shot from outside of the box that curved into the side, and it was insane.
Yeah. But so that's kind of how that's breaking down. Like I said, Barron plays East tomorrow. I'm curious to see that game because Glasgow lost to East 3-1. Coach Mahung was not there. Then they came back and beat them 5-2, and they were cooking pretty well in that game. Glasgow was. So I don't know what to think about East right now. And then on the girls' side, East is 3-0 in the district. Barron's 2-1. Allen and Glasgow are both 0-2. The game was it last week between East and Barron. East 2 weeks ago. East won 1-0.
Yep.
Decca Burr, I think, has already scored 21 goals this season for East.
She didn't score in the game against Barron, which was kind of surprising. But also, Barron took the approach of anytime she gets the ball, take her out. I don't care if it's a foul.
Well, I mean, sometimes you match skill with physicality, right? So that's the way that's the way sports go sometimes. If they got a good score, foul them.
Yeah, use your advantages.
That's right. So I'm curious to see how that works out. And Glasgow has won 3 games this year after not winning one at all last year and scoring only 2 goals. They won over the weekend at Logan County on penalty kicks. Yes, Deja Driver, the goalie, actually scored the winning penalty kick. So good to them. They won last week also 3-1 over Monroe. So we're out of here this week. It's the Brown Sports Bag presented by McDonald's Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.